Ever wonder why jewelers have so many different pliers? This video will talk about a bunch of them. Hey, I'm James, and a lot of beginners in jewelry or metalsmithing will have a lot of questions about why we end up with just like piles of different kinds of pliers. So I thought I'd do a quick little video just to talk about the variety of them. Contendi has a great little handout on pliers along with a bunch of other things that I'll have the PDFs up on my website resources page, so you can get a copy of that there if you like, or just go straight to Contendi. And I'll just start off and go through a couple of them. And so the first ones we have, most of the pliers are titled by the kind of nose that they have. So that would be the end of the pliers. And so these are just obviously flat nose pliers. And the different uses have to do with mostly how you're going to be bending the metal, whether it's sheet metal or wire, and what kind of bend you will get to it. So with flat nose and using them in conjunction with each other, you can get more crisp, tighter bends. And so it's not going to be a super crisp 90 like you would get from a bending brake, but you're going to get a tighter radius with those flat noses, as opposed to if you're going with a round nose. So this would be the round nose pliers. And again, you can use the pliers in conjunction, or as your hands get stronger and sort of more resistant to pain. A lot of times I'll use them to sort of leverage metal around it as well. The nice thing about hands is that you don't have to worry about the steel of the pliers digging into the metal, so it's not going to mar the metal or put marks into it. But you can see that there's a slightly different kind of radius to the pliers and the bends that you might do, whether it's at the end or further up. Something to consider with the round nose is that they do taper, so it's not going to be a perfectly same bend. It is going to be wider on one end and slightly tighter on the other. So take that into account while you're working. Chain nose are just really good pliers for usually getting into nice little places and obviously working with chain, but they're sort of a half round. So they'll have flat jaws and then a half round nose, depending on the kind of bends that you need to be doing. My personal favorites are parallel jaw pliers, and the reason that I really like these is that they have two pivot points that keep the jaws of the pliers perfectly parallel. So as you're moving them in and out, you don't get the kind of angle that you do with the other pliers that just have a single pivot point. And what's really great about that is it just grips the material all the way along the length of the jaws of the pliers. So you get really great grabbing strength, and they have several different types of jaws of the parallel jaw pliers. So you can see sort of like a chain nose there versus just a flat nose or something like that. But these are my go-to pliers that I use for almost everything because of that strength and versatility. Some other kinds of techniques that you can get into with different snips or cutters. So this has to do with, as they're cutting the metal, what sort of end that they're going to leave on the metal. And so, and also as you're getting into spaces, depending what kind of access you need, whether it's on the end and snipping the wires or off to the side. And these also correspond to the thickness of the wire that you're going to be cutting. So obviously you would need larger snips for larger wire. You don't want to try and get into taking shortcuts and trying to like cut sheet metal with these. That's not what they're for. You're just going to wear down your tool, put a lot more stress on the pivot point and everything else. So make sure that you're always using them correctly. Another tool that gets a lot of use in my shop are these, as you can see, these nylon jaw pliers. And similar to using your own hands or fingers on these, what I like is that they don't mar the metal. Now you're not going to get as crisp a bend because the jaws are larger, but you are going to be able to hold material. I usually use this to hold material while I'm doing other processes on the metal. And so again, it doesn't leave any marks on your material, and you can swap out these jaws as you need to. Related to the nylon jaws are these fiberglass pliers that are sort of harder to come across these days. I think the reason is that they can break a lot easier than all of these other tools that are made out of steel. And so maybe there was a lot of complaints about that or something. But I still use them. I keep that in mind, that they're not going to be as strong as these pliers. But again, they're really great for not marring the material and getting into particularly smaller places than the nylon jaw pliers to hold without making marks on your materials. And one last kind of specialty plier that I like to use a lot, just in my own work, I actually use a lot of split rings, which are just like teeny little keychains, and I use those to attach in cases where I want a little bit more strength or certainty that it's not going to come open like a jump ring or something. But even with larger, those kind of keychain sized split rings, you might wonder, you know, how do you get in there? And maybe you've like hurt your fingernail trying to get in there and everything else. And the nice thing about these pliers is that they have kind of a bent nose. And so what you can do is that'll squeeze right in between the overlapping loops of the split ring, and you can slide it on there, and then that gives you space where you can slide on other rings, and it keeps it open for you while you're working on it. So once I discovered that this plier existed, it really helped out, and I probably ended up using split rings a lot more in my work. So I just thought I'd share that little specialty one. And of course, there's tons more. There's some more details within that handout. I just wanted to give a real quick overview to give you a sense of things and get you started, particularly if you haven't bought any yet, so you can figure out which ones you might want to invest in the type of work that you're doing. So I hope this was useful and helpful to you. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can hear from me when I post future videos. Thanks for stopping by.